Upfront and Outspoken with Bob Williams. If you love the Constitution,
man is not free unless government is limited.
if you love freedom,
As government expands, liberty contracts.
if you believe in personal responsibility, if you believe America is still the greatest nation on earth, then get ready for an experience you'll never forget. This is Upfront and Outspoken. Here's your host, Bob Williams.
Some folks are born made to wave the flag. Ooh, they're red, white, and blue.
And welcome back. This is Friday. This is Upfront Outspoken. Of course, I'm your host, Bob Williams. Glad to have you along with me. On the phone with me, of course, is my normal Friday guest. He is the host of Passionate Justice that you hear here every Saturday at 2 p.m. Central, 3 p.m. Eastern. Of course, I'm talking about none other than Jonathan Wolfman. Welcome back to the show, Jonathan.
Thanks, Bob, very much, and thanks for all of you. I think I have a bit of something in my throat, but I don't know if I'd describe me as normal. I'm the typical Friday morning guest, but normal, that's not what my wife would tell you.
Well, my wife would tell me I'm abnormal, too, because I'm a talk show host. That's what she says. But
That's true.
you know, the thing is the midterms are over. Okay, the midterms are done, over with. The GOP won very soundly in not only the gubernatorial but in the Senate, and everybody has this big thought on their hands. You know, the Republicans are saying we want to reach across the aisle. We want bipartisan relations going on with the White House, and all of a sudden now we're getting these lines in the sand. Now I want to get your take. What do you see that's going to happen now that we have a GOP-run Capitol Hill?
I think the establishment Republican Party is going to try to reach out because I think that's their way. That's the way they see a path to winning the presidency in 2 years. But I think they're going to be fought tooth and nail by the Tea Party. And frankly, I think the Hillary Clinton wing of the Democratic Party would love to see that. And I think so, if I may, for two reasons. One is, if there's the perception that nothing can still get done, especially in the Republican-led Senate, it means that Mrs. Clinton doesn't have to present herself as the un-Obama Democrat over the next 2 years. All she has to do is not worry about Obama anymore, but to say, you see, the Republicans just want to screw up the government. And also, I think what it does for Mrs. Clinton is that a very conservative lean in the country means that she's less likely to be challenged by someone on the farther left, say like Mrs. Warren, Senator Warren.
You know, that's just the thing. We've been hearing a lot that I aired earlier today, that there is the possibility that both Clinton and Warren may toss their hats into the ring. And it would be interesting to see the debates between the two and who would pull out. According to polls, there's about 83% in favor of Mrs. Clinton. But I would love to see the Warren going up against Clinton in the Democratic primaries. I would
like to see that, too. I have a feeling, though, that Mrs. Clinton's the kind of person who would try to figure out some deal with Mrs. Warren so that wouldn't happen, whether it be a promise to be Attorney General, whether it would be a promise to be head of the Securities and Exchange Commission, or even a Supreme Court appointment.
Yeah, but the question...
By the way, Mrs. Warren would be very good for you.
Well, here's a question for you, though. I mean, is America really ready for a female president, given the fact that we've already had a minority president who in many people's views, is doing nothing. He's more of a professor than a president, given his inability on foreign policy. So is America really ready for a woman president?
Well, I think the fact that American conservatives tend to still hold the now deceased female Prime Minister of England in very high regard. I'm blocking her name.
Margaret Thatcher.
Thank you, Margaret Thatcher, Mr. Reagan's close friend. I think that there's an easier path for Americans to see it, especially if Mrs. Clinton presents herself as far more a doer than the current president and far more tough-minded, if she can get that across.
You know, what would be interesting is if you mentioned that the possibility of Warren being appointed for Attorney General or Exchange Commission. What would the ticket look like if it would be a Clinton-Warren ticket versus, say, Jeb Bush and somebody else? What would you think would be the odds?
There, Bob, I think you do potentially run into what you were implying before. Is America ready for a woman president? The question then becomes, is America ready for what it would perceive as thoroughgoing female leadership? And I would think that it's possible, but less likely than just having an American president and vice president, being women. I would think that Mrs. Clinton would think very seriously about a Texas Hispanic vice president like Mr. Castro down in, I guess it's San Antonio. I'm not quite sure which city.
Yeah, I think you're right. Now, well, let's go to the other side of the aisle. We'll stay bipartisan here. All right, we've heard that Chris Christie might run, Rubio, Walker, Ted Cruz. Of course, there's a possibility Jeb Bush will throw his hand into the ring. We have there is even rumor that Mitt Romney might once again try making a run for the White House. Who do you see of the potential Republican candidate, contenders? Who do you think the likely candidate would be for the Republican ticket?
I think the Republican establishment, the old Eastern Republican establishment, would love to see Jeb Bush run, and I gotta say, I think he's the strongest candidate, especially when you consider he's been a fairly successful governor in Florida. He speaks Spanish fluently. He has a great way of projecting himself as someone who is not a firebrand, but he is genuinely quite conservative. I do not see a Ted Cruz getting national traction, and I think that the governor of New Jersey, Chris Christie, I think he's just too brash. When he, even just last week or a week and a half ago, he told a reporter to sit down and shut up. That may work very well in New Jersey politics, but I think that that's going to die on the line in a national campaign. I think Rand Paul and Jeb Bush have their best chances.
In some ways, I have to agree with it. Now, the question is, now Scott Walker, he's won 3 elections in 2 years. His normal election, the recall election, and then now he basically slaughtered Mary Burke in the election. Do we see Scott Walker coming more to the national light, or do you think he's going to remain the governor of Wisconsin and not make that 2016 run?
I think he'll make the run if those rumors of scandal more or less die down. There have been some legal issues coming out of Milwaukee, and I have to confess I'm not completely up on them, but they have to do with certain kinds of allegations of election engineering fraud, where money has gone. Now, if he can escape that, I think he becomes a very viable vice presidential nominee, because the Republicans would love an upper Midwest state. As you know, you're from that part of the world.
Right, but we also have the fact of Rick Perry. Now, Rick Perry, he was brought up on these charges down in Texas, and although we have not heard too much out of Rick Perry the last couple of weeks, he still is considering a 2016 run. If these allegations against him are exonerated and he's found out, look, I didn't violate any law, this was because of what happened. I had somebody that was in charge of this organization who emphasized the fact that you're drug clean, all this kind of stuff. But she was caught, DUI, and he's cleared of all these. Do you see Rick Perry coming back onto the political scene again?
I do, if Jeb Bush doesn't run. If Jeb Bush, in the next 4 to 5 months, makes it clearer and clearer that he is going to do it, that he's taken his parents' concerns into his heart, and he's had that heart-to-heart talk with them, and he wants to do it, I think then Perry really thinks twice, because I think that what Perry offers is very similar to what Jeb Bush offers, but the personal package that Jeb Bush projects as being someone who could get potentially a hell of a lot of independent and Democratic votes. Perry just doesn't have that.
Well, I want to get into a couple of the issues that John Boehner, Mitch McConnell, and the president are all trying to work across the aisle, but it seems that the Republican Party and the Democratic Party, I'm going to put it that way because they've already drawn lines in the sand, and we do not even have the new Congress intact. And the one main issue that both parties are very widely divided on is the fact that if President Obama does exactly as he says and issues an executive order regarding this immigration, both Boehner and Mitch McConnell have already said that, guess what? That's like raising a red flag in front of a bull, because not only are you going to destroy any confidence, but any kind of negotiations on both sides of the table are pretty much going to be null and void.
I think what happens there is it depends. I know some of our audience is going to think what I'm about to say is a cop-out, but it really is not. I really think it depends on the specifics in whatever executive order President Obama puts forth. And even more important than that, it depends on how much the Republicans believe him when he says, and the other day, our audience will remember he repeatedly said that the executive order will have in it a "this will die" clause once there is bipartisan congressional agreement on an overall immigration plan. If the Republicans believe that, and that the law or that the executive order is written in such a way that it will self-destruct once there is a congressional law about immigration reform, then I think it's not so much a flag in front of a bull.
Yeah, but the thing is they've already said if you do this before the next Congress comes in, you've already basically thrown all this stuff to the wind. If I was the president, I would be thinking, okay, well, maybe, I want to work across the aisle. And what he says, and President Obama's exact words, and has been picked up all over, common ground, although technically on Capitol Hill, it's not a matter of common ground. It's in order to get policies done, you have to compromise. And I did not like that term out of President Obama. And I'm not the only talk show host that has attacked him for the term common ground. But the thing is shouldn't the president actually wait for the next Congress to come in before he says, all right, if you don't do it now, then I'm going to make this executive order? Honestly, Jonathan, I think he is raising that red flag.
If you're asking me should he wait, I would say yes. What I would do were I him, in the position he's in now, is I would send to both of them, that is Boehner and McConnell, the outline of what an executive order would look like in the absence of a congressional deal. But I would not put it forward as an executive order until the new Congress has a chance to consider it. I don't see what the president loses by waiting, and there may be, as you're implying, a great deal to gain. But I would say to the leadership in the House and Senate, here's what it would look like, guys. You don't need to start yelling about it in public. Let's work on this. But this is what I am serious about, an executive order absent congressional action. But this is what it will look like. And yes, so Bob, I agree with you. I would wait under those circumstances.
Yeah, I would too. Now we've only got a few minutes left, and I have to touch on this one thing. John Boehner said yesterday during the press conference that there are certain segments. There were three things regarding the equipment tax, I believe one of them was, and a couple other aspects of the existing Obamacare, that indeed the GOP, controlled House and Senate, are going to go after to try to repeal out of Obamacare. Now, this is President Obama's namesake. This is the one thing that his presidency will be known for. If in fact they are able to get a bill passed that takes away this equipment tax and these two other things, do you think we're going to see the veto pen come out more? And if we do see that, what do you think is going to happen then on Capitol Hill?
That's a great question. I think that the veto pen would only come out in the case that the White House lawyers say whatever it is that the Congress is voting to get out of the law would in fact cripple the law. If these things are massaging the margins of the law, but do not strike at the heart of the mandate for people to own health insurance, then I think the president will be very willing to compromise.
That the thing is, this, we're talking, this is his pet law. This is his namesake. And it seems that, even though both President Obama and Mitch McConnell and John Boehner have already said we're gonna work bipartisan, we're already seeing the lines in the sand that there's going to be more often than not anything coming out of Congress under the president's desk. I got a hunch that we're going to see President Obama say, no, I'm going to veto this one, this one, this one, this one. So all the legislation that's going to be coming forth, we're going to see that veto pen more often. And like I said, I don't like the term common ground, because you know as well as I do, Jonathan, even in business or when you talk to people or whatever, there's compromise. In order to get things done, you can't find common ground. You have to compromise. And I think by using the term common ground, it's already being said, look, you are not going to get what you want because I'm drawing this line in the sand. You want to meet me, you find a way to meet me, and that's not going to work.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think it's another example of another unfortunate phraseology on the president's part. But again, I think that if Boehner and McConnell can somehow keep the Tea Party at bay, there will be what you want, which is what you're saying, and I think all intelligent people want, and that's compromise, as opposed to the phrase common ground, which
Yeah, I agree. Jonathan, our time is just about up, and once again, I want to remind people, listen to Passionate Justice right here every Saturday, 2 p.m. Central, 3 p.m. Eastern. Jonathan has a book out there. Jonathan, in the last few seconds we have left, tell people where they can go about getting your book.
Oh, my book, Passionate Justice, a progressive memoir and essays. You guys will love it. It's at Amazon. And, if your organization buys 10 copies or more, I donate 5% of your costs to your organization.
Jonathan, as always, it's a pleasure having you aboard, and I look forward to having you back again next Friday.
That's great, and what a great discussion today, Bob.
Hey, this is what it's all about. Freedom of speech, the First Amendment. That's what it's all about here.
That is what it's all about.
All right, Jonathan, stay on the phone for a minute. Everybody else, guess what? That means it's time for me to get out of here. Stay tuned for NPR News, and then following NPR News, of course, the great Ed Till will be with you all the way up until 4 o'clock this afternoon. Until Monday, 6 a.m., this is Bob Williams. Take care of yourselves.